The latest installment in the much-loved Xenoblade Chronicles series is here, and it's absolutely crammed with things to do, systems to learn, and mechanics to explore, all set against the rather somber backdrop of expendable armies fighting an eternal war. This video will cover off some of the key things to know from the first 10 or so hours of the game. There will be light spoilers, but only in service of giving you a good grounding in how Xenoblade Chronicles 3 works. Before we get going, it's worth pointing out that it's not necessary to have played the previous games in the series. Xenoblade Chronicles 3's characters and story very much stand on their own, and while many gameplay elements have similarities to the earlier games, there's nothing here that you can't pick up independently. Okay, let's start by introducing the world.
Fighting in order to live, and living to fight. That's the way of our world. Ionios.
In Xenoblade Chronicles 3, two nations, Keves and Agnes, are forever at war. Soldiers are grown in vats and immediately trained to fight, with a future spanning only 10 years ahead of them, if they're lucky. And once those 10 years are up, their reward is to be sent on from this mortal realm. Each nation is divided into colonies, fighting units organised around a Phoronis, a mobile base and towering weapon of war, and competing against one another for ranks and prestige. War literally fuels each colony, as the souls of slain soldiers are absorbed by their flame clock, powering the abilities of its troops, yet forever ticking down, meaning each colony is always hungry to reap more souls to keep itself going. It's a grim scenario, and one that the story's central character Noah is clearly not comfortable with. While an accomplished fighter, he has chosen to become an Offseer, performing last rites for fallen troops, whether his own or Agnes's.
Friend or foe, someone has to lay them to rest. For that is my role as an Offseer. Right?
It's when Noah forms an unlikely bond with a soldier from the other side, however, that he finally realises that he and his friends may actually have a future beyond the constant battles. Opposing this are the shadowy consuls that oversee the operations of the colonies and who very much want to keep the status quo.
I'd like you to eradicate some vermin for me.
I think we'll leave the story details there, as getting to know each of the characters and finding out more about their world is a big part of the journey.
My name's Lance. I'm from the same colony as Noah. I work as the unit's defense. My special move? You figure it out.
Here we go, guys!
Let's give him the usual, Noah.
Where I'm from, it's called a land handshake.
You're on fire, Lance!
Let's jump into Xenoblade Chronicles 3's combat, which is multifaceted to say the least. New elements are introduced steadily, so many of the systems we'll go over here will need to be unlocked as you play, but I think it's valuable being able to see how the game's combat comes together, given it's so central to the gameplay. The battle system is a hybrid that utilises real-time combat backed by moves, such as arts, that need to charge up before being unleashed. This turn-based flavour works well, allowing you to move your character to take advantage of arts that have bonus effects for positioning, as well as tying into the ability to cancel moves to pile on faster damage. Cancelling an auto attack as soon as it hits and going into an art, for instance, is more efficient than simply doing one then the other. You can also hold off on using certain arts in order to unleash a fusion art, which draws on two arts at once. These can be cancelled into and out of as well.
We're unstoppable with you around, Senna.
Xenoblade Chronicles 3 has three broad roles: attackers, healers, and defenders. As you'd imagine, attackers are all about dealing damage, healers can resurrect fallen teammates and place buffs on the field, adding another positional element to combat, and defenders draw aggro to try and prevent the characters in other roles from taking too many hits. Within each role is a number of different classes, and it's not long before you can switch classes at will for every character, and even begin to add new classes to your party's arsenal.
Huh?
Each class can initially be ranked up to 10, and the higher the rank, the more of the class's abilities you'll master, which then allows you to have them assigned even when using another class. This mix and match philosophy means that the more you play, the more options you have for creating a completely bespoke build. And because class ranks initially cap out at 10, Xenoblade Chronicles 3 really is about having every character master a number of classes.
I'll hit him, and then I'm gonna hit him again.
To give you an idea of how many choices you have within a character's loadout, there are the basic arts, your bread and butter abilities. There's your talent art, a super that charges up by doing things that your role is supposed to do, such as placing field effects as a healer or using arts from the correct position. There are master skills, which complement the basic class skills. There are gems that can be crafted and offer a wide array of buffs and perks. And there are accessories, which also let you meaningfully modify your build. Add to all this the fact that once you're a few hours into the game, you're usually in a 6-person party and can swap characters whenever you like, as well as set tactics for the group on the fly, and there's a lot to be going on with. Thankfully, if you're not too sure what to do for each character, you can always use the auto build option and then make changes from there.
Dude, what? This hand.
Is it mine?
Of course, everything we've mentioned so far is just basic combat. Xenoblade Chronicles 3 has at least a couple more layers to quickly outline. First up, there's Ouroboros, which is when two characters fuse together into one super powerful otherworldly warrior. How powerful?
You know, it's totally bananas. Ouroboros is bonkers powerful.
This form only lasts a short while, but it can be an actual lifesaver. Plus, your basic combat knowledge applies here too, so you'll still be trying to position yourself appropriately and cancelling out of auto attacks to get more hits in. The other additional component you can take advantage of in battle is the chain attack. Here you get to choose from 3 orders, each of which has its own completion bonus. You then select characters and arts to use, building up the tactical points gauge, and completing the order once it hits 100% or more. There are some really interesting role-based elements at play in this mechanic. You can use healers, for instance, when you're close to 100% and the gauge won't go over 99. You can chain one order into another too, ultimately delivering some pretty fearsome damage. There's a lot to digest when it comes to combat, and this also extends to choosing how and when to engage with enemies while out in the overworld. There's wildlife everywhere in Ionios, so you really have to pick and choose. A few pieces of advice. Don't blindly follow the guide. Not only are there heaps of things to find out in the world, like items, loot containers, dead soldiers to send on, and ether channels to tap into, but you'll want to avoid engaging with most mobs as there are just too many of them to fight, and this means skirting around them whenever possible. You'll also want to pay attention to the level of enemies. Some titanic beast that's 20 levels higher than you are, not a great idea to take it on. Anything around your level should be fine, but even so, you'll want to avoid fighting on too many fronts, so it's better to lure creatures away one at a time for easy kills, as opposed to taking on a full pack. It's also worth noting that creatures with a sparkling aura will give you better loot, while anything with blue wings above it is an elite, so it'll be more difficult, while orange-winged enemies are unique. A fair bit of the world's wildlife is actually placid too, so you'll soon learn which creatures you can run right on by. That said, always keep an eye out for elite variants, as these will still attack on sight. We've really only scratched the surface of what Xenoblade Chronicles 3 has to offer, but hopefully this has given you a peek into what awaits you during its absolutely epic adventure. For more on Xenoblade Chronicles 3, check out 9 Things to Know Before You Play and our full review. And for everything else, you're in the right place. IGN.